Okay, welcome back. So the next topic is going to be budgeting for a car or a holiday. So we'll be continuing on with budgets, but I just want to do one of the questions from the homework. So I'm going to do exercise 10.4 question 4. Now this question actually follows on from a previous question. So you would need to use the information found in your previous questions for this to make sense. So make sure you go back and do that first. You need to use information from the previous questions. Okay. So, this one asks us to work out our profit from the stand. So I am going to work through it as it is. So the income that is available from this question, this one, was hot dogs, which sold at $3.50 each, and there was 460 of them. So 1,610. We've got hamburgers. They sold for $4.50 each, and we sold 320 of those. And we've got drinks, which sold for $2 each, and there was 510 of those. So the amount of money made from the standard sales, the type we expected to make, was $4,070. Now, not everything was sold. So we had leftovers, and they were sold, but they weren't sold in the same way. But we certainly made money off them. So from the hamburgers, we sold buns, 80 of them at 20 cents each. So from this, we made $16. We sold hamburger patties. And again, we sold the 80 left over, and we sold them for 40 cents each. So that's $32. We also had hot dog leftovers. We sold the buns. There was 140 left from that at 20 cents each. So $28. Plus we sold the wieners or the sausages, 140 of those for 20 cents each as well, $28. So we also made $104 leftovers from the leftover sale. So our total income here is going to be those two amounts added together, $4,174. Because while we didn't sell it in the way we expected, we certainly did sell it. Now, our expenses in this case, because we had to pay for all of those things, was hot dogs. And this is where the information comes from the previous question. $600, and it was $1.204 each it cost us. So $722.40 for all those hot dogs. The hamburgers, we bought 400 of those, and each was $2.564 each. So that was $1,025.60. And we bought drinks, 510 at 80 cents. We didn't have to sell off any leftovers because they were taken back. So that was lucky for us. So total cost was $2,156 for all of those things. So our profit, which is what we wanted to work out, equals our income, $4,174, minus our expenses. So our total profit was $2,018. So that's how you work out how much you made. Income minus expenses. If it's a business, it's profit. If it's personal, it's more likely to be called savings or something like that. Okay. So today's topic is budgeting for a car or a holiday. So again, we're going to start with some vocab you might not have heard before. Okay, fixed costs. So fixed costs are costs that don't change. Doesn't matter what you do. Like even if you owned a car, for example, for half a year, you still have to pay registration for the whole year, or you pay insurance for the whole year. We can't change them. You can't often negotiate a better price. So they're non-negotiable. Car registration is set by the government. Insurance is set by the insurance companies. You could, of course, talk to other insurance companies and you might get a better deal, but their price will be their price and that won't change too much. Now, running costs are things that do vary. They're costs that depend on how much you use the car. So things like petrol, the more you drive it, obviously the more petrol you need. The more often you need to get it serviced. So there are things that change. Something called a service interval, which basically means the time between car services. So it's often expressed as a maximum distance, maximum time. So you might see it written something like this, 5,000 kilometers or 3 months. So that means whichever one of those you reach first, you need to get your car serviced. So if you drive 5,000 kilometers in 1 month, you need to get your car serviced every month. If you drive 5,000 kilometers in 6 months, well, the minimum you needed to use was 3 months. So you would need to get it serviced every 3 months. So that's just the way the service intervals are generally written, because it's based on usage and some things wear out over time. So that's where the time thing comes in. Okay, let's do an example. So Susie owns a car that she is paying off. The loan costs $234.50 a month. Registration costs are $680 a year, and car insurance is $840 a year. She drives about 20,000 kilometers a year. The service interval is 10,000 kilometers or every 6 months. Services cost about $4.75 each. The car uses petrol at the rate of 12 litres per 100 kilometers, and it costs $1.40 a litre. Susie needs to replace the tyres every 2 years at a cost of $650 a set. From experience, Susie knows she needs to allow an extra $600 a year for repairs, draw up a budget for her car, and work out the weekly cost of owning and running or using the car. Now, a lot of these costs are pretty accurate. Some are actually understated, if anything. So let's go through and see how much it actually costs her to own this car. So I'm going to calculate the yearly budget, and then I'm going to divide back to get an estimated weekly cost, because it's going to be more accurate, because a lot of these things are quoted in different time frames, and we know that there's 52 weeks in a year, and that's accurate, whereas 4 weeks in a month is not necessarily very accurate. So I'm going to calculate the budget for the whole year and divide to estimate weekly costs. Okay. So let's work through it. Again, I'm going to use the table format. It works well. Why not use it? It's simple. It's easy to follow. Okay. So loan repayments is the first thing that's listed. She's paying it off, it says. The loan costs $234.50 per month, and there's 12 months in a year. So the total is going to be $2,814. Registration. That's already quoted in a yearly price, so I can just add that in, $680 a year. Insurance, again, quoted in a yearly price, so I can add that in. Now, I'm going to, servicing is next. Service costs. Now, it says $475 each, and it's 10,000 kilometers or every 6 months, and it says she drives 20,000 kilometers in a year. So in both these service intervals, she's going to need 2 services for the year, either in kilometers or in time frame. So 2 a year she's going to need. Now, petrol is the next cost. So we need to do a bit of work here. So it costs $1.40 per litre for petrol, and she uses 12 litres for every 100 kilometers she travels. So for every 100 kilometers. So we need to figure out how many lots of 100 kilometers she travels. And it tells us in the question she travels 20,000 kilometers per year. So if you divide the total amount traveled by the 100 kilometers, that would tell you how many lots of 100 kilometers she is going to travel every year. And for every one of those lots, she needs 12 litres of petrol, is what it tells us in the question. You might want to think through that a bit. That's probably the most complex bit where people get a bit stuck here. So $3,360 is what it's going to cost us for petrol. Tires. Now, they cost $650 a set, but she only needs them every 2 years. So we only need to account for half the cost each year. And she needs to add another amount for repairs on a yearly basis. So that's another $600. So if we add all that up, total cost of owning this car for her, minimum is $9,560. It's probably a lot more than you might have expected. Obviously, if you are paying more per month, which is pretty normal as well, it's going to cost you a lot more than that. If you drive a lot more, it's going to cost you a lot more than that too, in terms of servicing, petrol, tires, maybe other repairs. Anyway, let's work out the weekly cost, which is what it's asked us to do, because that is the yearly total cost so far. So to work out the weekly, you take that yearly and you divide it by 52, the number of weeks in a year. So $184 per week is what it's going to cost this lady to run this car. Scary stuff. Now, something I need you to note. The text, for whatever reason, uses 50 weeks in a year. That is not correct. There is 52 weeks in a year. So in reality, you would use the full 52. They've just decided that 50 is a reasonable figure. But I don't really think that you would do that. Okay, just one last thing before we move on. So this topic says budgeting for a car or a holiday. Now, I'm not going to do a holiday budget, but there's some questions that you're going to do. But some things you would need to consider when you are doing a holiday budget is transport. So that both external and internal. So that means transport getting to your holiday venue plus transport while you were there, accommodation, fees to get into whatever you want to do while you're on holidays. Meals cost a lot when you're on holidays. You can't cook at home a lot of the time. Travel insurance. And of course, you want to have spending money. You want to be able to buy things and have some fun when you're on holidays. So think about those things as you do the questions. So exercise 10.5, question 1, 2, 5, and 6 is what you're going to work on for this. This activity that is here is part of the next lesson, so don't worry about that for now, and I'll do a separate recording for that one. All right, see you in class.